Hello guys, teacher Levy is here again, and I'm here to discuss schools of psychological thought. So what is a school of psychological thought? When we say school of thought in psychology, these are the major theories in psychology, which are all proven assumptions. And when we say school, they are sharing same ideas on methods and subject matter. So these are the schools of thought. We have Structuralism, Functionalism, Psychoanalysis, Behaviorism, Gestalt, and Purposivism. So unahin na natin tong Structuralism on 1879, founded by William Wundt and Edward B. Titchener. Their major objective was to discover all elements of which consciousness be composed. What they were looking for were the elements o yung bumubuo sa consciousness. Their subject matter were sensations, images, and feelings, and they used the method of introspection and experiment. According to Structuralism also, the mental states o yung kalagayan ng ating isip are responsible for man's behavior. Well, psychology is described as man and his experience in Structuralism. As Structuralism tried to discover the structures of sensation, feelings, they identified 8 kinds of sensation. Vision, the sense of sight; audition, sense of hearing; olfaction, or the sense of smell; gustation, the sense of taste; cutaneous, or the sense of touch; static, which is the sense of balance; kinesthetic, the sense of movement; and organic, or the sense of thirst and hunger. At para ma-identify all those senses and structures, William Wundt used introspection. It is also known as experimental self-observation. Wundt's technique involved training people to carefully and objectively as possible to analyze the content of their own thoughts. Introspection was also used by an ancient Greek philosopher, and that was Socrates, whereas he examined his own thoughts. Wundt, as the father of psychology, believed that there were 2 key components that make up the contents of the human mind, and these were sensations and the feelings. So the behavior of the people are based on their senses and their feelings according to introspection and structuralism of William Wundt. So the major principle that William Wundt used in structuralism is the principle of elementarism, whereas the complex experiences are made up of elements such as senses, images, and feelings. So these are the elements of the behavior of the people. Sa mga ikinikilos natin, ito ay nakabase daw sa senses, sa images in our mind, and the feelings. Next, we have Functionalism on 1898, founded by William James, John Dewey, James Angel, and Harvey Carr. They used University of Chicago as the place of their study, and the group was concerned majorly within the capability of the mind, so then the process of the thought. The movement was thus interested primarily in the practical applications of research. So in this school of thought, it was more precise on emphasizing the function of the mind rather than the mental processes. The method that they used was observation. So functionalism is the doctrine that what makes something a thought, desire, or pain, or any other type of mental state depends not on its internal constitution, but solely on its function. So the role it plays in the cognitive system, of which it is a part. More precisely, functionalist theories take the identity of a mental state to be determined by its causal relations to sensory stimulations, other mental states, and behavior. So the behavior of the people are all based on the function of the brain or the mind. So Ang behavior ng tao ay nakadepende lamang sa mga stimulus or stimuli na makararamdaman ng ating mind, and then the mind will just function accordingly to its role or the parts of the mind per se. Functionalism also states that learning is a means of man's adjustment in his surroundings. So one of the functions of the mind is to let people learn so he can adjust in his own surroundings. Mental states also influence man's behavior since it is its function. Stimulus response explains man's behavior because the response would be based on the function of the mental states or the mind. The mind will serve its function always, so whenever you see a food, it will tell you to eat because it's function. Let's now look at psychoanalysis, founded 1900 by Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, Carl Jung, Karen Horney, Otto Rank, and Melanie Klein. So they wanted to discover the cause and the treatment of mental disorders. Their subject matter was about psychic energies and instincts, unconsciousness, mental apparatus, id, ego, and superego, psychosexual stages, and anxiety defense mechanisms. Sa mga susunod nating video, I will be discussing the id, ego, and superego, even psychosexual stages and anxiety defense mechanisms. They use clinical method known as the psychoanalysis techniques. They use University of Vienna, Austria as their arena of study. According to psychoanalysis, personality is deterministic or can be determined, dynamic and changing, organizational or organized or patterned, and developmental or can be developed. All behavior is determined or caused by some forces within the person, somehow known as the unconsciousness. Sex urges are responsible for man's behavior, thus according to Sigmund Freud. While according to Carl Jung, personality is a stronger force in determining human behavior. The unconscious attempt of an individual to overcome inferiority complex is the strongest driving force. That's according to Adler. Next, we have Behaviorism, founded 1912 by John B. Watson, Edward Thorndike, Ivan Pavlov, Burroughs Skinner. They wanted to describe behavior with regard to stimulus and response. They wanted to discover animal behavior and overt human behavior. So they use observation as a method of their study, whereas the arena was Johns Hopkins University. According to this school of thought, behavior is described as regards reflex and conditioned reflex. So ang behavior daw ng tao ay somehow reflex and sometimes conditioned reflex or set by conditioned given by a certain stimulus. So this will be discussed in another video. According to behaviorism, man's behavior is not due to consciousness but to a stimulus. So what is a stimulus? It is any object or event that elicits a sensory or behavioral response in an organism. So ang stimulus ang nagtutulak sa atin to act or respond. So if you are crying because of the movie you are watching, ang stimulus natin doon ay ang movie, and then the response is crying. So next we have Gestalt, founded 1912 by Max Wertheimer, Kurt Kafka, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Lewin. Their objective was to know the whole pattern of behavior or experience since it is Gestalt. So their subject matter were perception and memory as a whole. Their method of study was observation, and their ground for the study was the University of Berlin, Frankfurt, Germany. So Gestalt says that the whole of experience is more than the sum of all its parts. So therefore, in identifying a certain behavior, we need to see the whole experience and not the parts per se, but we need to identify it as a whole. So a change in any element changes the whole. The mind functions as a whole unit, so it should be discovered, identified, and studied as a whole. Next, we have Purposivism, founded 1915 by William McDougall. His objective was to know the purpose of each type of behavior. So he is identifying the purpose of the different behaviors of human beings. So his subject matter was hormones, instincts, and emotions. So the method he used was observation that the place of the study was Duke University, Durham, North Carolina. So we're almost done, so let's just have a recap of the schools of thought. We have Structuralism, Functionalism, Psychoanalysis, Behaviorism, Gestalt, and the Purposivism. So let me have a bonus topic in this video. So let's have the perspectives in psychology. We have Structuralism, Functionalism, Psychoanalytical theory, Gestalt psychology, Purposivism, Humanistic psychology, Cognitive psychology, and Psychobiology. What is a perspective? A perspective is the view of how the psychology is being studied. So when we say perspectives of psychology, these are the views on how psychology is being studied. So here we go. First is Structuralism, founded by Wilhelm Wundt, by which it is important to study psychology using thought processes and the structure of the mind and identify the elements of the thought. So the technique to be used in psychology must be introspection. So according to this view, it should be any behavior should be interpreted using the thought processes and the structure of the mind. Next, we have Functionalism by William James and John Dewey. So the importance of applying psychological findings to practical situations should be used in studying psychology. That's one of the views of functionalism. So the function of mental process in adapting to the environment. So the methods used: introspection, experimental method, and comparative method. So in studying psychology, it focuses its study on the function of the mind. Next, we have Psychoanalytical theory by Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. So the influence of the unconscious on the behavior is one of the views in psychoanalytical theory. And also early life experiences and personality development and its stages should be considered also in identifying the patterns of behavior. So individual case studies of patients are being used as the method. So in this perspective, the unconscious has a big influence in behavior of individuals. Next is Gestalt psychology by Max Wertheimer and Wolfgang Kohler. So it is important to use the organization and context in the perception of meaningful wholes. So perception experiment is being used as a method. So in studying psychology, it is important to use the whole meaningful behaviors than the specific individual parts of behavior. Next is Behaviorism by Edward Thorndike. So in this view, it is important to use objective and observable behavior in the study of psychology. So in studying psychology, there must be careful research methods. Behaviors are mere responses to external stimuli. So experiments primarily on learning and often done with animals. So in this perspective, the keywords are stimulus and the response. So whenever there are stimuli, there would be responses. Next, we have the Purposivism by William McDougall. So behavior is purposive or hormic. So therefore, the reasons of behavior are based on hormones, instincts, and propensities. So behavior is viewed according to their instinct or the individual's instincts or hormones or propensities, and even sentiments or the taste. So experiments, particularly in physiological, so therefore innate, based on the biological construction of human being, and the social psychology or the psychological impact of society. That's the social psychology. Next, we have Humanistic psychology by Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. So people's feelings are very important in studying psychology. So the view of human nature as naturally positive and growth-seeking must be considered in psychology. Faith in people's abilities to solve their own problems must be also considered in psychology. So interview techniques were used in studies. So according to this perspective, human beings have their own way of discovering himself or themselves and identifying the answers to their solutions, because there is an Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Next is Cognitive Psychology by Jean Piaget, Albert Ellis, Albert Bandura, Robert Sternberg, and Howard Gardner. So in this view, psychology must focus on thinking and reasoning and the processes. In this view, there is focus on mental processing of information. Memory experiment is being used and information processing approach. So in this view, the key word is the cognition of individual into its behavior. Next view is Psychobiology by Johannes Muller, Carl Lashley, David Hubble, Thorsten Wiesel. Behavior as a result of complex chemical and biological process within the brain is used in studying psychology or behavior. So there is brain scans, electrical brain stimulation and recording, chemical analysis, or brain tissue. So the key word from this psychobiological or psychobiology as perspective of psychology is the brain itself and how it is processing. The brain tissues and the electrical stimulation inside the brain are the things to be considered in studying psychology according to psychobiology. Next is Evolutionary Psychology by Charles Darwin, Konrad Lorenz, and E.Q. Wilson. So according to this view, behavior, including intelligence and personality, is influenced by innate factors. Therefore, the key word for this view is the nature of beings. So the method used is naturalistic observation. And the last of the perspectives of psychology is Cultural Psychology by John Berry. So behavior, according to this perspective, must be discussed or must be studied based on the cultural context. So therefore, culture of the people has a big impact in the behavior of the people. So experimental method, comparing the responses of different people from different cultures, must be used in psychology. Let's have a short recap on the perspectives of psychology. We have structuralism, functionalism, psychoanalytical theory, Gestalt psychology, purposivism, humanistic psychology, cognitive psychology, and psychobiology. So I think it's already time for us to finish the discussion. I hope you have learned a lot in schools of psychology and the perspectives of psychology. And class, if you have any question, you can just send me a message or post any comment on the comment section below. Well, it is time to say goodbye. Thank you for watching. See you next time.